Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. And I am so excited for our last main stage event here. I'm really thrilled to welcome Amir Bonifatimi. He's the Chief Growth and Innovation Officer at XPRIZE. And he's up here with Sang Shin, who is the Director of Digital Innovation with Temasek. Amir, I think you're here joining us from Los Angeles, and Sang from Singapore. So totally global conversation here. Both of these organizations have had just really exciting announcements just over the last few weeks. XPRIZE announced a $100 million gigaton scale carbon removal prize funded by Elon Musk. And Temasek just this week announced a $600 million decarbonization investment partnership with BlackRock. So I can't wait to hear what you all have to talk about. This is a heavy hitter conversation. I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Cody.
Thanks, Cody. Well, let me just start by saying how thankful I am for being able to join in this discussion with Amir. And just wanted to say hello and welcome to everybody joining us. We've got about a good 25 minutes, and I'm sure we can talk that away really quick. So I just want to get it started. We talk about climate change in general for the first half, and then maybe talk about some of our programs in a little bit more detail. I'm myself very curious to learn about Amir's program over at XPRIZE. So to kick it off, I guess the first thing I'm kind of curious to ask you, Amir, is, I think that innovation helped get us into this quagmire that we're currently in, all the inventions we've had over the past centuries and whatnot. And I also believe that innovation can help us get out of this as well. And I'm really banking on that and hopeful for it. But I think there might be some differences in the way innovation was done to get us in here, and maybe the way it will be done to get us out of here. And I'm just kind of curious if you had any thoughts around that one.
Yes, thank you, Sang. This is definitely a good observation. We have been doing innovation in the past, I think, 30 or 40 years in a very accelerated rate, and designing and bringing to market amazing product and services, anywhere from robotics to CRISPR to blockchain to new physics and chemistry. But what is that to respond to COVID, we're all basically helpless. We had to stop economy and look very hard, have a strong look at what we do in terms of bringing innovation to market. And that is a hard look in terms of how we can understand externalities and responses and responses to the innovation we create in harm to society. So what we learned in these past 12 months, which could be a beginning of an answer to your question, is that how did we get out of it and how fast we were getting out of it? Well, first and foremost, in terms of the vaccine, we found out that within a few weeks of synthesizing the vaccine, we can find solutions, but it took about a year to bring it to market. And that came because of multiple factors. One of them was collaboration between labs and data sharing between labs as well. And the availability of machine learning tools and quantifiable tools that could help us do in silico simulations about bringing vaccines to market. But this would have happened if we had not had the chance to having fast track to federal approval, to policy support, to do the testing in labs and clinical trials, but also be able to use AI machine learning and simulation capabilities. This leads to think that maybe the innovation that we have been doing so fast could also be an answer to the way to get out of it in terms of, one, expanding collaboration between different parties and stakeholders, promoting more knowledge and data sharing, but also having a different outlook on policy support and the approval scenarios that needs to happen in terms of bringing innovation to market, whether it's vaccines, but also transportation, mobility, clean energy, why not? And new construction, new buildings. But also when we think about innovation, we have witnessed that we were not really resilient and ready to absorb the shock that. So the innovation that comes out of it maybe should incorporate some form of design that thinks about being resilient, being agile, and be able to iterate very fast in finding solutions. So innovation by itself to build a product or service might not be enough. We need to take into account the societal, the shock to society, ethics, privacy, climate, environment, economy, work, future of work, food distribution, food security, all of the above. So this interconnectedness, we witnessed it. And now designing and innovating should probably take a new chapter on how to design to be resilient and to be able to, with agility, to respond back to any form of shock or any form of difficulty that would hit us, whether it's, again, another disease or another vaccine or another virus or an electric shock to the grid or some natural disasters. How are we going to be responding to that? So the coming together as a group, I think, now is become obvious. And while climate was an area where we have to solve for it globally, it's a common collective problem. We also learned that COVID was a common collective problem. And that forced us to respond collectively. So maybe this is a lesson in innovation that could translate to climate and could translate to energy transition. So that's how I see innovation being shaped up again.
Yeah, no, totally. So I completely agree with pretty much everything you've said. I think, the way of innovating these days is a little bit different in the pace because of digitization and other inventions we've had. And then the most critical part, I think, is exactly what you mentioned, is the urgency, right? The sense of urgency. And we have seen, and exactly that, COVID has shown us that in the case of an emergency, the human race can get together and deploy something they've been working for many years in a year. In actuality, we had another example with the ozone hole with chlorofluorocarbons back then. That was somewhat more of an urgent thing, and we were able to get together and do something about it and close that hole. And I think part of the challenge is just that sense of urgency, but I think that urgency is here now with climate, and I really agree with you and hope that we take the lessons from COVID and apply it here. Speaking of COVID, I was kind of curious on your thought about, I was reading something the other day, and it was a statistic that in 2020, carbon emissions dropped globally by about 6.5% roughly. And that is against the backdrop of essentially what we understand, most of the world shutting down for a good chunk of the year. What are your thoughts on that number, given what I said? Just kind of curious you're thinking about that and what it means.
Yeah, I also look at the statistic, and this is an interesting number, knowing that within a year, we went back to probably 15 years ago in terms of the emissions. And in fact, if you want to think about our path to Paris Accord to get to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, this is probably the 6.5% is probably what we need to do every year, record every year to get to that level. So in a funny way, I was thinking maybe we need the COVID every year to get to the Paris Accord. And maybe we need two of them, because one just to make up for the past year and one to basically get us ready for the year. So maybe the goal will be to have some form of shocks to the economy that will basically slow down transportation, our impact on methane emission, greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not that we have to have COVID or a shock, but maybe there is a way that we can evaluate and analyze what contributed to that drop, right, in emission. Of course, we drove less, we traveled less, we probably consumed differently, but that's probably one way to look at it. There may be many other ways that now we can think about how program deterministic way goes to basically have 6% reduction in CO2 every year from now on, and maybe bring it to 10, because otherwise we're not going to reach the accord and the agreement. Now, in terms of how we get there, I think there are probably some opportunities. One of them is that we learned, willing or not willing, that we're going to work at home many times efficiently, and hybrid work maybe is probably our new reality. So maybe travel will be diminished a little bit less. And with the deployment of vaccines and going back to normal, I think we have a window of between 12 to 15 months to figure this out, where we're not going to go back radically. If we had to go back to normal right now, all the benefits that we gain will come back. So with this inertia of basically going back to normal, this is a tragedy that we cannot vaccinate everyone immediately. But because of this slowdown, we have probably some months to think about how we can design and institutionalize and create incentives from policymakers and governments to help us think better about ways or multiple ways to create intervention, some form of programs that could help us gradually, probably not 6.5% every year, but somehow contain our emissions, but also at the same time, start transitioning better to clean energy, store longer-term clean energy, and start using them, and do everything that we know we should do, but take the opportunity of doing it right now. But the statistic was funny because it brings us back pretty much to, I think, 10 years ago, 2005, 2006 area. And it took us that long to get here, but it took us basically 1 year to drop. So if it took us 1 year to drop to that level, maybe there is some hope and some opportunities for us to figure out mechanisms. But this should be probably a challenge that governments have to launch to everyone, to come up with ideas and innovation ways to do a mix of policy, mix of economic incentives, probably better carbon taxing, all of the above, to curb and help us control a little bit the gain that we have gathered so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is an all hands on deck effort that requires the public and private sector to really collaborate and work together to get to that. I mean, as you said, you know, it's quite a daunting thing if you think about that. We need that and more every year to hit our targets. And I think if that doesn't bring forth the severity and urgency of the situation, I don't know what will. But you know, one thing, and I do want to transition into our programs, particularly your program, and I do want to know about how you're thinking about dealing with the mitigation between carbon removal, and you mentioned earlier just now clean energy and the transition.
Well, I think we are like most organizations that are considering climate change and global warming a serious threat to environment and humanity, and we have been active at this for the past 6 years. First, we started in that if CO2 has to exist, what can we do with CO2? That was our first step. And then we launched a prize on transitioning CO2 into material science, whether you can create new surfaces or liquids or even drinks or tablecloths or whatever material science to do to showcase that CO2 that is available right now in our atmosphere or in liquids or on surfaces, if we can extract it, can be transformed to something else. The second phase for us is to remove and extract that CO2, that carbon and curb emissions. So to extract that, we're launching this massive prize in a week from now during on Earth Day. We're going to be announcing and publishing the guidelines for probably our largest private prize in history, which is a $100 million prize provided by Elon Musk about removing and going to gigaton extraction. Of course, it's going to start by 1 ton, but collectively we can extract gigaton. And we know that once you extract that CO2, there's a path to transfer that CO2 into something else. So there is now a flow that we create. And there are other mitigation factors, excuse me, where we can, sorry, 1 second. But obviously we can plant trees, we can do many other things, but we need to extract CO2. But once we extract the CO2, the next phase will be not to create CO2 or basically limit the amount of CO2 that goes to the atmosphere or have basically CO2 and basically create energy and electricity that is not generating that much amount. So this is on the climate path, and there are many different efforts that we're going to be looking at in terms of limiting emissions, such as smart cement and concrete, no production of methane by meat. We're incentivizing creation of affordable plant or cell-based meat that not generating any emissions as all produced in labs. So these are the effort that we do in terms of the carbon side. But in terms of transitioning to energy, we're also thinking about how can we imagine innovations that, one, on the technology side, could create longer storage capacity, whether it's battery storage, but also could be carriers such as hydrogen, ammonium, that could be stored for a long time, that could be transformed into electricity, but also transporting electricity from the grid, either transporting it locally in short distances to microgrids or long term. So if you imagine distributing energy in time, you think about creating it today and using it in the next 10 or 20 years. With that technology, kind of technology available, because if you can produce during empty hours clean energy, we can use that clean energy later on. So in terms of distribution, there are some ways to distribute clean energy, but that's not enough. We need to produce better of clean energy and electrify society faster. So we're working on transitioning and finding economic mechanism of carbon pricing to incentivize better a path to transition to clean energy and to electrification of society. So these are our general thinking about how to do both, how at the same time curb the emission curve, but at the same time find mechanisms to increase the growing demand of energy by changing the ratio of clean energy towards fossil fuel-based energy. So again, we're not going to be producing that, but we're thinking about mechanisms and incentives to do so. And this prize and the previous prize that we had and the prize on artificial meat are the starting point. But we're probably going to be launching prizes on smart grid, better mitigation pricing, better integration of local production of electricity into the grid, and local distribution and transitions. So all of the above are part of our strategy to really play our role. But in fact, we're a convener, we're a designer of big challenges, and we're a convener. And for instance, with Techstars, we're partnering to do some of that, but hopefully with Temasek as well and others, the goal will be to bring more innovators to understand what is the path to that problem and what are the type of solution that we can demonstrate its feasibility and therefore bring support from government and policymakers to sustain those solutions in longer term.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to you, so the immense complexity of what we're dealing with, and this is just coming from what you're doing within where you're sitting, all the different moving pieces and the, if you will, the highway that we're trying to build in this transition, and then imagine that for the world. It really makes you understand the complexity of what we're dealing with, and I think, you know, we do need to spend some time in not just shooting randomly in any one of those efforts and areas that you discussed, but to also find some coherence, again, like you mentioned at the end, for these different entities to try, and we must try, to find some coherence in how this will all actually link up together. And it will, but it's just a question of, you know, is that an enabler and how efficiently can we do that? We don't have too much more time. You know, time flies when you're having a good discussion, but I'm kind of curious about your program. And one of the questions I was also wondering, maybe the audience is wondering, is, you know, when you discussed the program with Elon Musk, and, you know, he probably had some ideas or some guidance that he conveyed to you folks. Kind of curious what you could share, of any.
Absolutely. Well, next week you're going to hear more, even by the mouth of Elon Musk and some of the goals that we have. But I would say I can provide some bullet points about the impact that we're trying to achieve through this program. Removing gigaton carbon is a big number and is a big audacious goal, but it could be broken down right into multiple. One of them is to increase, really to increase the global supply of cost-effective and permanent carbon removal solutions. It's not a one-off, but find cost-effective ways that could be templatized and blueprinted to be developed globally. The second one is to really demonstrate and prove the scientific and viability of high-quality carbon removal solutions that can be deployed sustainably, but not only with including existing solutions, but new solutions as well. So it's basically going to be a trade-off between how can we create a portfolio strategy of using existing solutions of carbon removal and new ones, and demonstrate viability, a long-term deployment of those solutions, and maintain that sustainability. It's not about to remove it, but while we remove it, are we able to curve and make sure that we're not generating new CO2? So this is a and higher level of solution building, which is very complex. But once you read the guidelines and what we came up with and the incentives, it's going to be interesting to see how we think about that. A third element of the program, I think, is to maybe accelerate an equitable deployment of those solutions, because it's easy to say that the solution works in the United States or in Singapore or Germany, but would that solution works also in Mozambique or in Paraguay or in some other places of the world, without having to inject massive economic incentive and make sure that the solutions are equitable, respect their local environment, and can be sustained and supported by their governments. So that, again, that's a level on the high bar of goals. This is a high level bar, but we're trying to incentivize to build such solutions. And if I had to add another category of impact, I think we need to think about how can we inspire the next generation to think about emission and carbon removal and stewardship of Earth properly, and how those solutions will lead to a new series of training and knowledge on this shift, so we don't have to do that again. So these are the 4 categories of goals that are going to be embedded into one prize that we will probably be very excited about. But I think in terms of accelerating radical breakthrough, I believe that this challenge will probably be one of those that will spearhead a number of other breakthroughs that will see the light because of this catalyst and because of this spike that we try to create jointly. And we try to invite any other organization to join us to identify those solvers, to support the local innovations, and to help think together collectively, again, this collective effort. And we need the urgency of those solutions.
That's really interesting, and I completely I'm for what you described just now, that this is, we should all join together. There's no competition in this. We are all going for the same goal, and that is the higher order of all the effort and time we sink into this is for that. So we're all in the same boat, rowing to the same island at the end of the day, and there should be no reason why we don't collaborate. I look forward to doing whatever I can do to do whatever we can do together. That's a lot of doing, but I do want to just quickly, we do have a few minutes left, talk about the last point you made about the generational motivation and thinking and mindset shift that you mentioned as a 4th point there. I do feel that is a really important thing carrying on forward, that we don't retract and go back. And also in there is some transition that needs to happen between what the general mindset may have been or is, and what it is transforming into and what it will be in the future. And I think in the context of innovation, there is a mindset shift that has to happen. And if I may, I do want to share that is something that I'm closely working with over here and trying to build essentially a manifesto through our Innovation by Sustainability Alliance. And that really is about mindset shift, thinking about how we think about the intentionality of the work we're doing, the time horizons and the sources of funding. All these parameters are a little bit different when we talk about sustainability innovation. And I do think there needs to be a shift there as well. And hopefully, it would be awesome if we can work together to propagate that in the work that we do and with other people as well. I think that would be a good sub move along with the umbrella of things that we're all doing together. I think we're at 10:25 now, Cody. I'm not sure how much more time we have.
Yeah, we are at time to wrap up, though I could listen to the two of you talk about this for the next hour. Thank you both very much. I mean, you went, 10 miles deep, 10 miles high, 10 miles wide on the topic, which is fantastic. And, you both are doing such amazing work to build collaboration around these solutions, and that is the name of the game here. No one can do this alone. This is not a 5 entrepreneurs are going to build $1 trillion companies and solve climate change, right? This is many entrepreneurs building many really valuable businesses to help mitigate the problem and also help build resiliency to the world that we live in today and create circularity around the economy. It's Nicole Systrom said it in this morning's panel. It's It's really about tearing everything down to the studs and building it back up again in a new way. And so, that there will be some, multi-billionaires and trillionaires probably created, but there's also going to be lots and lots of very successful businesses that just build really healthy, vibrant new economy businesses to help us all out. So thanks for the work that you're both doing in your organizations and broadly in the community to enable that type of collaboration. We really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you very much. Remember,
thank you, everyone. Thanks, Cody. Thanks, Amir.
XPRIZE.org on Earth Day, and you'll see the guidelines and the announcement. And we'd really like to work with both of you and with all the other partners. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, so this concludes our Give First stage presentations for the second session of the summit. However, we're not done. There are still another 45 minutes of fun left for everybody. So here's what we have for you. There's a new link there's a link that's been there, but it's not been active in the left rail called Techstars Sessions. So you can go there and pick from a handful of stages to learn more about ways to engage with Techstars. In particular, founders who want to learn more about Techstars accelerator programs, they can go there and hear about how our accelerators work, how to apply. That session will be led by Saba Karim, who's our director of pipeline at Techstars. He manages sort of all of the inbound application activity that comes through the Techstars system. We also have a room for people. We talked a lot about the value of community. You heard Lalitha talk about what we're doing around startup weekends globally and how communities are organizing these startup weekend events, but just generally the importance of community for climate and sustainability work. Anyone who wants to go talk about the communities in your region, and we have regional rooms set up in the Techstars Sessions as well, where you can engage with other people who are focused on either building community or learning about community activities in your region of the world around climate and sustainability. Any investors who want to learn about how to gain access to deal flow from Techstars, or anyone who's interested in mentoring with one of our Techstars accelerator programs. If you're a seasoned expert yourself and are ready to give back, you can go to a session on either of those topics. That's led by our team members, Kevin Liu, who's our director of investments at Techstars, and Christy Walthall, who's our mentor catalyst. Both of them will talk to you about how to get more involved and engaged with Techstars in those ways. And then finally, if you're a large company or an organization that wants to get more involved formally with Techstars from a business partnership or relationship perspective, figuring out how we can help you build acceleration programs or work with early stage startups in some way, you can join a room about how to engage with Techstars around partnerships. That's led by Morgan Berman. And so again, all of those are in the Techstars Sessions area. If you're ready to do that, feel free to hop over there now. In addition to that, the startup expos are still open. So you can go there if you didn't get a chance to watch some of the featured videos that we have. Some of the featured demos are actual videos. You can just check them out. They're awesome. There are 6 really incredible startups in that way. A number of our founders will still be manning their booths. So if you want to go in there and learn more about our challenge finalists, you can go visit their booths as well. If the booths are empty, you can jot down their contact information and get a hold of them later. But if they're in there, hang out, learn more. Note that they may not know you're in the room. So you can message them in chat, but you can also click the button to opt to come on stage and actually talk with them directly if you want to. Otherwise, they may not realize you're there. And then finally, we have also in the Techstars Sessions, I forgot to mention, we have one of our accelerator programs, the Techstars Sustainability Accelerator in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, holding a room there as well with some startups that are accelerator graduates from Techstars. You heard a few of them on stage today. They're going to give demos of their businesses, so you can go there and learn about some of the most recent Techstars Accelerator graduates out of our Sustainability Accelerator in Denver with the Nature Conservancy. That's led by my colleague, Hannah Davis. A short plug for Hannah. Hannah and I run a podcast together called the Techstars Climate Tech Podcast. And the most recent episode actually on that just came out today, which Hannah hosted with Nan Ransahoff, who runs Climate at Stripe, as well as Sean Drost, who's the CEO of Diversified Hydrogen. So they go into both how Stripe is working on carbon removal and how hydrogen is a factor in the climate fight. And so check that out, Techstars Climate Tech Podcast. There's a new episode coming out every 2 weeks on that. And then finally, last plug from me, which is that the networking sessions are still open. So if you haven't tried that and want to go see who you might meet, feel free to jump in there. You'll be paired at random with another attendee every 5 minutes. You never know who it could be. I used to run product at StumbleUpon, and the magic of StumbleUpon is that every time you click the button, you never know what's coming next. Same with our networking sessions. Every 5 minutes, you never know who you're meeting next. So hopefully you can have fun in there. Finally, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful by the amount of attention that this community is bringing to this problem. We didn't build the world over the last 120 years, but we are living on the world we have now. And no one else is going to solve climate change. No one else is going to create sustainability. No one else is going to create circularity. It's up to us. And I'm so inspired to see so many people motivated by these problems coming together to learn how we can all do more together. Here at Techstars, we only can do a small part, but our part is that we can be global conveners. We can bring together thought leaders and help provide a stage. And hopefully we've done that today, and that it was meaningful for you. If you have feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. You can hit me up at cody@techstars.com, or you can DM me on Twitter at CodySims with 2 M's. Either of those work great. I really can't wait to continue to learn with you as we co-create all of this innovation movement together. This is our problem to solve for, and there's a lot of us here who are ready to go make it happen. A lot of us here who've already been making it happen. So go enjoy the Techstars Sessions, the Startup Expo, the networking, whatever you want for the next half an hour or so. And thank you. We'll see you around, and appreciate you.